Hey and welcome to a new video. Today we're going over the new OpenAI responses actions that have been added towards the platform yesterday, and it is a fantastic way to provide additional functionality towards your AI chatbots. In order to do so, go towards your flow builder, go with an action node, then go towards add items, integration, and then from here choose OpenAI. If we say press edit action and press the drop down, you will see a few new actions being added, the model responses tab. And model response basically means the OpenAI responses API endpoints. We have the create model response, which is similar towards create a chat completion. We have the get model response. This means that now, like with the assistant API, we are able to save the memory, the chat history between user and AI over at the side of OpenAI instead of needing to save it inside of our system field OpenAI, which allows us to have more context stored directly at the server location. We can also list input items and we can also delete the model response. But first, let's get into the first action, create model response. This is really similar towards the chat completion. So the first action where we will be able to insert our AI model. And for reference, you can go towards this URL that OpenAI provides you with to be able to see which models work with this responses API. By default, it will be GPT-4o Mini, which is one of the most affordable and fastest models that OpenAI currently has at the time of this recording. The system message will allow you to add things like persona, roles, guidelines, instructions, and business information. The previous response ID means that if you want to save the chat history over at the OpenAI's end, then you will need to fill in this response API. We will show you shortly how to get this response API, of course. The input will be the input from the user. Then you will also have the option to go with an image URL insertion or a file URL insertion. Both work pretty well. For files, there is only support for PDF at the moment, at least. That is a restriction from OpenAI's end. And again, you can read more about the model responses, as you can see here, if you press this link, or go towards this link rather. As you can see, if we want to store the conversation, whether to store the generated model response, default is true. If we set it to false, then we will not get a response ID back. So these two options work together. So if you set it to true, then in the response below, you will get a response ID back, which you can then save towards a custom field and then use towards your own liking here. You will also be able to use tools, and as you can see, tool choice will be automatic, none, or required. So those are the options that you can do. Automatic is by default, which is pretty much, as you can see in the description. None means only generate a message. Auto means generate a message or call a tool. Required means must call a tool of file search, web search, or function call. If you leave it to automatic, then the model will choose the best possible action for you. And in that case, it's much easier. You will also be able to use functions. And if you created any functions, if we go back, you will be able to create functions from the automations tab. And then you can go towards intent functions. All the ones that show up here will then also show up inside this selection of functions inside the dropdown. Currently, I only have one for demo. That's the only reason why it ends up inside of this selection. You can do a file search, and a file search is basically based on the vector store IDs that you have of your OpenAI. So if you have any vector stores, you can put in the IDs here. You can also save them inside of a bot field and then just put in the bot fields here. As you can see, max number of results. The max number of results to return in file search default is 2. So if there are multiple results being fetched, then you can set a max number of results to be returned like so. If you rather instead do a web search, you can also do so. So once enabled, you will get some additional options: web search context size, high level guidance for the amount of context window space to use for the search. You can set it to low, medium, or high. You can also limit the search to specific countries only. So instead of searching internationally, or if a domain has multiple extensions for different kinds of countries, you can also assign a specific country to search for just here. You can even do so by region and city and even time zone. You can, of course, set the max tokens if you like to, the temperature, just like with a regular chat completion. And then you'll also have the response format, as you can see here, either text or JSON. You can also remove keys from the JSON by key names with comma separation. So if you want to reduce the size of your storage inside of custom fields upon request, then that is easily done so as well. Let me create one response, and then we can show you how to store the response ID directly inside of a custom field. So I just filled in a basic request where I am going to ask, hi, show me the most recent news updates. I'm going to do a web search. As you can see here, the web search context size is medium, and I limited it towards the country that I live in, which is Hungary. So let's take a look at the max tokens. I set it to 1500, the temperature to 0.4. And as you can see, we get a response back. You can see that the tool that has been used is web search call. We have a completion, and we have a few things that we can map here, right? So first of all, we have the response ID on top. So if you enabled the yes on the storage, then that is something that we can save. So if the store is true, it will generate a response ID, and this response ID you can save. So let's say this would be OpenAI response ID. So we can save this towards a text custom field, that is fine, and we can save the first one. Then for the rest, you can see all the options. So the status is completed, the instructions, you can see the output, the web search call is completed. And then if we go a little bit below, you will see that we also have some tool selection, like a web search preview. Preview context size is medium, and the type is approximate, country Hungary. And you can save all of this if you like to. You can even store the user, which basically relates towards the workspace that has been used and the workspace ID in that case. That could be useful for certain tracking purposes. Now, in order to store the message itself, you will need to go towards content, like with the chat completion, take a look, and then you will also see some annotations. If you are interested in viewing those annotations, you can do so, but that is not really needed. All we need to store is the text. So if we want to do so, we can just go with, let's say, AI response. So let's save that, press add, and then we have saved the initial response of the AI. But as mentioned, you can go with any kind of file search. If you want to use a file search, you will need to fill in your OpenAI vector store IDs by comma separation, and that will allow you to then search through your files instead. Just like with an OpenAI assistant, the OpenAI Responses API has a little bit more functionality than just to search through files. You can also do web searches, you can also do images, and even use file URLs as long as the extension is a PDF. This was the short overview of the OpenAI Responses actions that have been added towards the platform. If you have any questions, do let us know and we'll try to help you out as soon as possible.